All right, delighted to be joined by Jim Crawford, Republic of Ireland Under-21 manager. Just named the squad for the friendlies against Croatia and also Qatar's Under-23s, which is going to be next month. But before we talk about your squad, there's a couple of players that you've worked with quite closely in the senior squad. You must have been proud and delighted to see Josh Keley and Keley Phillips getting called up by Hamer.
Yeah, look, myself, the staff, we're all delighted that they got the call up. I think they've learned a lot, being with the under-21s in terms of high pressure situations, but ultimately, it's about the individual themselves, the club that they're working with, the opportunities that they were given at their clubs where they've excelled, they've done well. You've got Josh Keley involved in a League One playoff in Wembley Stadium, brilliant. And then you've got Keley Phillips, and what a story that is. It's an amazing story where the first time I sort of, met Keley was in the FEI transition year course down in Cardiff, and he showed a real desire and passion for his football. And then, next thing I knew, we were bringing him into the under-21s, which he never let us down. So absolutely delighted for the two of them.
Yeah, and in terms of the relationship with Hamer, obviously he's been in the job almost a year now since he was announced. How have you found the dynamic with him in terms of coming in and also his communication style?
He's been excellent. We've dovetailed very well. I understand what he wants. He was quite clear to myself that, look, if and when he feels 21's players are ready, he'll bring them up, but he's not going to bring them up to be just part of a squad. They'll be brought up for meaningful minutes, for meaningful development, which is fair. And look, that goes with the territory of being the under-21's head coach. So look, we've linked in terms of potential players, more so for this window because he's leaving out the championship, or the majority of championship players, because of rest and what have you. But Heimer's been excellent. He's exceptionally knowledgeable about players, Republic of Ireland players, that's for sure. And himself and his staff, they work tirelessly behind the scenes, getting things right, prepping everything to make sure that they're going to be ready September, October and November. So we certainly wish them well before every camp.
Yeah, and in terms of the style of play from the pathways up, from say 15s, 17s, 19s, your age grade, and then all the way to seniors, is there any change in dynamic there in terms of maybe philosophies or anything since Hamer has come in?
No, not really. Hamer, he's been in with one of our managers' meetings that we had there a few weeks back, and he was sort of painting a picture of his own philosophy and his vision for the Republic of Ireland, and it's all in around the same, like we've always been. It's about us trying to develop players for the senior manager, and he's certainly aware of that. But he left a really good impression with the other coaches, because I think a few of them hadn't really met him informally, and they were quite impressed with what he had to say. But look, Heimer's come in, and he certainly lights up the place. His knowledge is second to none, and I think he's a great manager. And I'd say he manages his staff really well, because when he comes in and meets any of the under-21 staff, they all think he's an exceptional character too.
Yeah, and every cycle that you've been involved in the under-21s, the impact of Brexit is being felt more and more, and it's actually interesting when you look at the squad that's behind you there in terms of the diversity of age, diversity of experience. You must be feeling kind of like I suppose there's a bite of Brexit there, but also that it's actually a good headache in a certain sense as well, in terms of the level of experience that some of these players that should be maybe in theory under-19s or even under-17s have got already within our league.
Yeah, look, only as you said there, the players that we have on show for this particular camp are worthy of their call-up. You know what I mean? You've got players who are playing in packed houses every week, which is certainly going to help them as an individual dealing with environments they're playing meaningful games that's going to help their own development. But I think the most important thing is that the coaches that they're all working under are exceptional coaches who will certainly stretch and support their players, and it's something that I've used all day today when I was talking to the media, that it's very important that when you're working with young players, yes, you stretch them by playing them in the first team, but the support, the intervention period between games is also important, whether you're working on a player's areas where he can improve, and you're showing them with clips from games, and then you're getting on the training pitch and you're helping that player develop those blind spots that maybe he doesn't know. So that's exceptionally important, and I'm quite delighted for the fact that they're working in those environments, the players, because we really, in essence, only get a loan of the players. So when they come into us, they're tactically up to speed, physically, technically. They're in a good place when they come into us. So it's just about us getting the players right with regards to the opposition, showing them the strengths and weaknesses of both Croatia and Qatar. But I think the most important thing is players come in and they feel part of something, because we've got some big games coming up in September, October, November, and it really is an opportunity for these young players, exceptionally young players. I think it's been the youngest squad that I've had today, that they go and express themselves and enjoy playing for the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah, one of those players who has been fast-tracked is Sullivan. What was the rationale in terms of bringing him up? We've seen him with Cork City in the first division last season. He was exceptional, and again, he's getting game time at a high level. What was it about him that you felt he's ready to play under-21s?
I seen him last year playing in the first division, where he was scoring goals, and where he's a very clever player, playing more times than not in the inside channel. He play wide right, but he'll play in those pockets, and he's got an eye for goal. I think his work rate is exceptional. But back when he was playing in the first division, I was saying, okay, that's great. Can he now do it? Moving up a league into our top league, and he has. I think he's been excellent, and I'm looking forward to working with him. I haven't met him yet, but I believe he's a great character, and that's what we want here. We want a group. We've got 24 players for this window. We want 24 players with strong characters that will do anything they possibly can to stay in this squad. Because look, we had a big provisional list for this window, and with players who are also in the Premier Division, the First Division, and all over Europe that haven't made it, and I'm sure they're disappointed. But it's about coming into camp in June, working hard, and showing people how good you are as a player. Because look, we've picked them because we know they're good players, and it's just getting used to that international environment.
Yeah, and like, let's say a Keley Sullivan or players with Ilk Mason Melia, for example, as well. When you're on the training ground, or they're playing in a match for you, as Mason Melia has, to very good effect already. Is it very easy to distinguish the difference between players that've been through the League of Ireland, have played those men's matches, compared to maybe players who maybe in a bygone era would have been going through the Premier League under-23s or the under-19s, and that there's something maybe tangible that you can sort of distinguish from the old school type of player that would have been at that age grade?
Look, sometimes you can, and look, one thing's for sure is that when you play under 21s international football, more times than not you're playing against first team players. First team players that have an edge about their game. They're strong in physical duels. They're fitter, they're sharper moving the ball, and that's a big plus when you've got players who are playing first team football coming into the 21 setup. And players that we have brought in before that maybe haven't had that first team exposure, you might see something, but they're not long getting up to speed, because they're quality players, you know what I mean? And it's something that we've said, it's great playing first team football, but you need a good staff behind you, because these players are very young, and you also have to understand that development isn't linear. you know. So when players go through those rough moments in their career, their first team career, if they're left out of a team, that you need the right support network, i.e. the head coach, the assistant coach and other coaches that are involved in clubs now to help support that player and work them through those rough moments, because that's the time that will stand to you when you get to 25, 26, when you're in the senior team and you're having those rocky moments again, whether it's 15 minutes in a game or it's a spell of games that you're not playing well in, that will come and help you get through those moments too.
Yeah, and in terms of pathways, obviously Mason Melia, for example, is going to Spurs from the start of next year, so it'll be interesting to see where his development goes, because this will be very different to what he's experiencing at Pats. There are kind of developmental leagues, something Hamer was speaking about in his press conference last week, which is like either going to the Netherlands or Belgium, etc. Do you feel there's a benefit to one over the other?
Yes, the developmental leagues, you know, over in Belgium, Holland, it's first team football. It's a little bit different to the League of Ireland. It's very much more tactical. But I do, like, we've had players that have gone over to Belgium second tier and you know, in the top tier in Holland, and you know, it's excellent for them. It's excellent for them. But I wouldn't take away going over to a Premier League Under-21 developmental team and sort of getting used to the philosophy of the club, getting used to the coaches, what way they train, you know, because they've got the resources there to help you become a better player. But there does become a time where it becomes stale for the player, and you can see it, that they need to get out. They need to go and experience first team football. I just felt, you know, there was certain players that have been sort of, they outstayed their welcome playing Under-21's developmental football in England. They probably got a little bit comfortable in their surroundings, that they sort of need to get out on loan. But you've got to get out on loan with the right clubs. You know, a right club that mirrors your own parent team's philosophy in terms of playing. But go to the right club that will help you and your strengths as a player to become even better, so they become your super strengths. So, you know, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but, you know, I've nothing against going over and playing 21's football at that developmental stage, because there's a lot of really good coaches over there too. But it's understanding the right time. Okay, you need to go out and challenge yourself again and go play first team football, whether that's Belgium, Holland, or elsewhere.
Yeah, and Mason obviously made his mark for you in March against Hungary, and a record goal in terms of his age as well. How do you expect him to develop positionally in terms of, obviously we see him as a number 9 for the most part, but speaking to Stephen Kenny at the League of Ireland launch earlier in the year, he was talking about him actually having that ability to play off the right and maybe some other amounts of flexibility. So how do you think he will develop as his career goes on?
Yeah, look, there's no crystal ball to it. Like, I know he's played as a 10 with Pats, he's played out wide with Pats, he's played as a number 9. But I think the first sort of place you look at is, okay, where does he want to play first and foremost, and give him a chance there, and then help him develop there. But you know, there might be a time with the 21s where we need to put him somewhere else, like every other player, because some of the players we've picked here can play in multiple positions, which is a big asset to your squad when you're bringing in a player that can play in 2 or 3 other positions. So, you know, Mason's got that going from, he scored against Hungary, a penalty, and I've no doubt that Mason's probably chasing the record on the 21 goal scorer, which is Kevin Doyle and Robbie Brady, 7 goals, so he's probably got one eye on that. But since Mason's come in with us, we brought him in for the October window, where we were playing Italy against Italy and Norway. Like, it was a big, massive window for us, but he unfortunately came in with an injury, but he's fine now. And then the next time we seen him was in the last window, and he was great. You know, he came in. I love his character. I love his determination to get the best out of what he has at the minute, and that to me is a solid footing for any type of player to have those characteristics. Yes, he's got ability, but first and foremost, he's got the temperament to go a long way in the game, but he's still only young. Like, he's a tender age of 17. So, you know, look, what we've always said to him is just, you keep your head down and keep doing what you're good at, you know, and keep improving.
Yeah, and Sam Curtis as well, a different pathway, obviously gone through Pats and then now is at Sheffield United and has a couple of loan experiences. In terms of bringing him back in, what have you made of his sort of development over the last year or so?
Yeah, Sam, you know, Sam's had a really good experience, you know, like even at Peterborough, where he found it challenging, but, you know, to myself, I would have looked at it and said, okay, you know, you're learning now, because, you know, he came at Pats at a very young age. He played in European games, he played in big league games, he played in an FAI Cup final, like unbelievable stuff for somebody so young. And then, you know, he goes to Sheffield United. He played a couple of 21s games there, where that in itself is a big sort of step for him mentally, in terms of, hold on, I've been playing in front of, you know, packed houses over in Ireland. Now I'm playing a little bit of developmental football. Then he went to Peterborough, where now he's in the thick of men's football, where you're in that performance space where you have to win by hook or crook, because there's jobs on the line, there's points on the line, and you know, I'm sure Sam has learnt a hell of a lot from that. Then he goes up to St. Johnstone, where it's more the same, where, you know, you've just got to perform in training, in games, every day of the week, and that's the nature of being a professional player. Again, he's played in some, you know, really big games for St. Johnstone. You know, I think they got a draw against Celtic in one of the games. Like, we've watched all his games, and you're hoping that Sam comes in, and with the experience he has with the 21s, because he played most of the games in the campaign, or could have been all the games in the campaign he's been involved in now. He brings that sort of experience and that know-how to what has probably been the youngest group that we've picked so far.
Yeah, and then Warren Davis, how impressed have you been during the season? Because he's brought goals, his movement is excellent for Drogheda United, and I think even speaking to Graham Gartland about it, when they first had him in the Shamrock Rovers Academy, even the position he was playing back then is completely different to what he's doing now. So his pathway has been incredible. Yeah,
look, Warren's been somebody who's been on the radar for a while. You know, his work ethic is really high. It's really impressive. And as you said there, he can score goals, and you know, they can be few and far between, where he's got that work ethic, he's got an eye for goal, but also you can't write off his involvement in the overall game. You know what I mean? Whether it's passes into the final third, you know, getting in crosses and what have you. But look, I think he'll stretch defences. I think we'll create goal-scoring opportunities for him, and look, he'll be definitely playing. He'll be definitely getting capped while he's over here. So it'll be great. I don't know him personally, but sometimes you can get a lot from a player by the way they play the game, and he'd be one that I'd say, you know, it's a great start, because he gives everything for Drogheda. You know, every time he lines out for them, he's a joy to watch, and looking forward to meeting him.
Yeah, the last couple of European qualifying campaigns you've been involved in, you've got very, very close, agonisingly in some cases. The fact, I suppose, in age grade sides where there is turnover, does that freshness kind of help in a certain sense? So you can put that aside in terms of like the pain of missing out, and you kind of go with a new group and a new level of excitement?
Well, the turnaround was very quick from last October, when we didn't qualify. You know, you're going to Italy, needing something. I thought the boys were magnificent. You know, every single one of them on the build up to the game, everybody working exceptionally hard for each other to make sure that we're right and we're ready to play against Italy. And then after 90 minutes, it doesn't quite happen. It was a tough one to take. It was a tough one to take, and you know, you develop a bond with a lot of them, sort of relationships with a lot of them, and then all of a sudden it's done. You know, they move on. You know, they become into that area of, okay, their next step in international football is a senior team. But probably the plus side was that it was only a couple of weeks later we had to assemble a squad because we were playing Sweden twice, so it just sort of got your mind away from it. But it was a tough one to take. But what was encouraging was we brought in a group to play against Sweden in 2 games, and they showed us, a real desire to play for your country. You know, each and every one of them, and that for me sort of gave us all a lift as a staff going forward. That okay, we're looking forward to working with this group. And we changed it again in March, you know, with personnel to give us a look at other players. We've gone again where we've changed it. So we're getting a real good look at the group that's available to us for this campaign, up-and-coming campaign. But what I will say is that anybody who's been on the provisional list, that, they could play a massive role in the qualifying campaign at some stage, because it's happened before where somebody gets introduced into the second part of the campaign and becomes a fixture in the team. So it's all to play for.
Yeah, and obviously the group, it's an intriguing one. England, obviously, that's where a lot of eyes will go, but Slovakia will be interesting, Kazakhstan, Andorra, Moldova. So when you've picked friendly opponents, obviously March you had Scotland and you had Hungary. This time you have Croatia, the under-21s, and then Qatar's under-23s. Why those two for the June ones?
Look, they were available to us, and for me, Croatia are a pot 2 team. So you're going to get challenged like we did last year. We played them last year in the same venue, and they'll ask serious questions of you, you know. So as soon as Croatia turned up, we said, yeah, we'll take it. Qatar 23s, that was the only other one that we could get. So look, we took it, and you're happy enough to play against a team that's older than you, that's it might challenge you more physically than anything else, but it'd be a good game to play in. But when we played Scotland and Hungary in the last window, it was a real sort of eye-opener that football at international level isn't pretty all the time. Not all the teams are trying to play through the tours that Scotland came. They were aggressive, they were going direct quite early in their build-up, which is fine because you've got to have an answer, you've got to deal with it. And then Hungary were physically aggressive in duels, in their overall play, which causes problems. So they're the games you want. You want to be challenged. There's no point playing games against pot 5, pot 6 teams, and it becomes a little bit false and easy for players. These are the games. Croatia, first and foremost, will be a real challenge to the players, and it's one I'm looking forward to, and I hope that the 24 players who have been selected are looking forward to it, and I've no doubt, absolutely no doubt that they will.
Yeah, and I suppose finally with the news today, of course, about Euro 2028 and like the pathway is clearer whether or how Ireland can qualify for it. There's probably in the current senior team not a huge number of players who have experienced major international tournaments. How vital is it then for this crop of under-21s to get over the line and give them that ahead of potentially, hopefully, and fingers crossed, that we are at a Euros in 2028?
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate experience, is qualifying for the European finals at 21s level. And why you would say that, okay, the stage that you're playing on, the amount of eyes that are on you, from different leagues, would be fantastic for the players to rub shoulders with top European players in such a stage. Would be great for the players to learn. So that to me is the experience that we're going after, and I've no doubt about it. Look, if we got to the finals and players performed well, it would certainly skyrocket their career, wherever that is, whether Heimer takes them in from the next international window or they get a move from their current club. But I think the possibilities would be endless for the players, and first and foremost, that's what we're after. What we're after as a group is that the players enjoy the experience and get the most out of it. But second to that is that you stay competitive in your group till the very end, and that's what we have been doing. But the real golden star, or North Star, sorry, is to qualify for the finals.
All right, well, best of luck with that, and best of luck in June, of course, as well. And thanks very much for your time, Jim.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.